All right, here we are, 8-7B. 8-7B. We're going to factor trinomials and solve equations here. So we're just kind of doing some more things that we did last time. Last time we did either guess and check, or you could do the product sum table. We're going to give you a third option here. It's called the square method. I'd like you to try it today, and then you guys can kind of decide what you like best. But the idea here of the square method is to, number one, make a square. Make a square. And so you have our square, say, here. And you're going to make it into 4 little boxes here inside the square. And you're going to put the first term in the top left. So our first term, your ax squared, that's going to go here. Ax squared is going to go there. And then your last term, step 3 here, so your last term, you're going to put the last term in the bottom right. So your last term here, your c, is going to go in the bottom right. And then, basically what happens is, you're going to break down those terms and write your answers on the outside of the square. Now, this will be easier when we actually do an example, but what we're looking for here is we're going to put answers, say, when you break down those terms, you're going to put your answers here and here for your ax squared. When you break down those terms, the factors of that. And then you're going to break down your last term, the c, and put those answers here and here anywhere. And then when you get the right answers, the right factors, you'll be in good shape. And it's a lot easier to see when you actually do an example, which we will. And then the next step would be add the bottom left and top right to see if they add to the middle term. So they want to end up getting it where these two terms, the stuff in here, once we've figured out what the best factors are, we're going to put them in the bottom left and top right, and they have to add to equal b times x. Okay? They would add to make your middle term here. If they do, then we're in good shape. And then your factors are written outside the square. So your answers that you got in these highlighted areas, here, 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 and here, those actually be your answers for your factors. Okay? So let's take a look at an example here, down below. Here, 2x squared plus 5x plus 3, because it might be a little easier to see when we do it as an example. So first term, 2x squared, goes in the top left. And then our last term, the 3, goes in the bottom right. Now, we need the middle terms here. We need these, or not the middle terms, but this diagonal, the bottom left and top right. That should equal the b, which is a positive 5x. So we've got an answer to get a positive 5x. So we're kind of going to look at the terms and put them over here and see on the outside. So we can break down these first two terms. So 2 times x squared, well, those break down. We know that there's only one way to really get that. You got a 2x times an x. That's it. 2x times x. And then the outside one, you've got a 3 and a 1. Well, we've got different ways to get that, right? -3, -1, +3, -1. So let's try the 1 down here and the 3 up here, because we know that 3 times 1 equals 3. We're trying to break that down. And now let's see what we get. So if I take, and we kind of use this like a multiplication table. So I'm just going to kind of say, all right, 2x times x, so that's 2x squared, we got that. So let's go 2x times 3, and that would give us a 6x. And then we go, say, in this one, you've got, oops, get that square back here, good. And then on this term, you would go 1 times x, which would give you an x in this box. Really, you just need to get those diagonals because we know how to do that. But anyways, now you take a look at our diagonals. X plus 6x. Does that give us what we're looking for here in a 5x? No, it doesn't. That gives us 7x. So we know that something's not quite right. But because we know that there's 3 here, there's only one way to get it, 3 times 1 or -3 times -1. Let's try something different. So let's go ahead and say, let's just reverse those numbers. Let's put the 3 down here and the 1 here and see what happens, because we'll get rid of, say, this area here will be gone. We'll get rid of all that. Okay? So now let's try it again. If we take our 3 times x, that gives us a 3x here. And then on this side, if we go 2x times 1, that gives us a 2x. Now when we add the diagonal terms here, 3x and 2x, what do we get? Do we get 5x? We sure did. So now we know we have the right answers. Okay, now we know we have the right factors. So here's where it gets pretty cool. It gets pretty easy here, is if there's no sign here in front of this 1, what is it? If there's no sign, it's a positive. Same thing down here, 2x and 3. If there's no sign, it's a positive. Okay, so now there are our actual factors. I can take my x plus 1 from up there, and down here I can take my 2x plus 3, and that is my final answer. Those are my factors. So square method is kind of closer to guess and check than it is product sum table, but it's kind of a little combination of both. And it's a little bit of work, but you get the answers pretty good here, and it kind of double checks for you. Okay, so I like it. And again, we didn't have this. We just had to do guess and check all the time. And we didn't have product sum tables or the square method when we did it. Okay, so let's try an example here. Let's do a couple of these. X squared minus x plus minus 6. Okay, so we're going to make our square. All right, and in this case, remember our x squared goes here, and our last term, negative 6, goes here. And so we're trying to find numbers that are going to add up to our b term of negative x. So they have to add up to equal a negative x. Be careful with that negative. Okay, so now we know the answer to some of this, right? We know that our factors here are x and x to make x squared. And now you've got numbers to make a negative 6. Okay, so let's try, well, one's got to be positive, one's negative, because it is a negative 6. So we only have to have different signs here because of that negative. So let's try, I don't know, 2 and negative 3. Or let's go negative 2 times 3 here. Okay, so now when we go ahead and do our multiplication, we know now, again, just using the cross like a multiplication table, we're going to have negative 2 times x is negative 2x here. And up in the top, it's going to be 3x here. So if we add those up, we're close. We got 3x and negative 2x. That gives us a positive 1x. So we were really close, but because it's a negative, we got to do something. So what could we do? We could flip the signs. We made this one a negative and this one a positive. That way we'd still have negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. But now it's going to change what we've got in the middle as well. It's going to change a little bit the signs of what we got in the middle, and that'll help us out. So now when we multiply x, now when we multiply x by 2, you're going to get 2x here. Sorry, just getting this going. And x times negative 3 here would give us a negative 3x. Now when we add those up, we get negative 1x, which is what we want here. Okay, so now I have my terms. Now I'm all ready to go. I've got my parentheses here, x minus 3. And then over here, I've got an x plus 2. And that is my factor. That is my answer. Done. Okay, the next one. The big thing we have to look on this one is a little bit trickier because let's see what we've got. We do not have a b value here. We could write it. Remember, we want to write it ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, or even need the 0. But here we don't have that. So if we rewrote this, we could write this 4x squared. What would this b term be? It'd be plus 0x then, because 0 times anything is 0. That's why it's not there. Minus 9. Okay, minus 9. So now that gives us an a, b, and c, so that I can draw my square. Draw my grid here. First term, 4x squared, goes in the top left. Last term, negative 9, goes in the bottom right. And then we're trying to get numbers that are going to add here to make a 0x. So we're hoping that they get stuff to cancel out here. Well, I'm going to try for my factors, I'm going to say, well, let's go 2x and 2x to make 4x squared. I could be right or could be wrong there because we got 4 by 1 we could use, but we'll just kind of work. That's why it's kind of like guess and check. And then here, if we go, say, -3 times a +3, let's see what we get, see how it works out. Okay. In this grid here, we got 2x times -3, which is going to give us a -6x. And here we've got 2x times 3, which is a +6x. So when we add across diagonally here, we've got 6 and -6. That does equal 0x, so we're in good shape. Again, I could put a plus sign in here because there's no sign that makes it positive. So our answer would simply be 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 3. And there we go. There you have it. Square method. Rocket. Okay. We could try 3 and 4 on your own. So now let's go to solving steps for solving polynomial equations. So in this case, what we're doing, we already did the section 8.5 where we solved, where we factored and solved, binomials, trinomials after factoring. So it's kind of the same thing. We're just going to add that step. So again, what we want to do is we want to get all terms to one side of the equation and put it equal to 0. That's the same. Then we want to check for a greatest common factor. And then factor the trinomial, and you can use any option you want. You can guess and check. You can use the product sum table. You can use this new square method. Either way you want. I'm going to give you the freedom to do that. Then set each factor, set a parentheses, equal to 0. Now, if you already have the parentheses set up for you again, it's already been factored, you can skip right to step 4. And then we want to solve. And I should put that in there. Set equals 0 and solve. Okay, and solve. The next step then would be check your answers by substituting into the original equation. And finally, your factors are written in set notation. And so, again, let's say you got answers x equals 0 and x equals -1. We're going to put it in set notation, 0, -1. That's really no big deal. It's just pretty easy to do. Once you have your answers, you just put them in the set notation, and you're in good shape. Okay? So let's try an example here. Let's go to number 2, we'll say. All right? Okay, number 2 is going to be, I'm going to do the square method today because we're working with square method all day today just to try and give us another option, something that we like. Okay, so our first term, our a term goes in there, 2x squared. Our c goes in here. Last term, -7. And then we're trying to get numbers that, again, are going to add in the middle, or on these diagonals, to equal the middle term of -13x. -13x. Okay? So, again, 2x squared. Well, we can break that down. Basically, it's got to be 2x times x one way or the other. One way or the other. And now the b term, you've got, or excuse me, the last term, the c term, you've got a -7. Well, we do know that there's only one way in which this works, right? Or there's only two numbers, but there can be positives and negatives, since it's a -7. So let's try, say, 7 and a -1, because we know they have to multiply to make -7. So when we do our multiplication now, we're going to end up with 7 times x is going to give us 7x here. 2 times a -1, 2x times -1 is going to give us -2x here. So we add across here 7 and 2x. Does that equal -13x? No, it's not even close, really. It's you're at +5x. You're a long ways away. Okay, so let's try something different. Let's first try to maybe switch the numbers around. Okay, let's switch them. So I'll get the eraser out. And this is where, you're going to have to do some erasing here to get things right, and what if the factors don't work. And so some people don't like this method because of that. So now let's try to go with, say, we're going to switch it. So we're going to go 1 here. Let's go -1 and +7. Okay? See what that does for us. All right. 2x times 7 here will be 14x. -1 times x is -x. Okay, we're really close now. We add those up, we get 14x and a -1x. That's a +13x. But that's no good because we want to get a -13x. It's -13x. So back to the drawing board. But we're really close. Now we're really close. We're just, the sign was different. So if you get the situation where you get the right numbers, but the sign is opposite, I got 13, but the sign was wrong, Well, then what I can do is I can just change the signs. I can make this a negative and make the 1 a positive. Now let's see what we get. 1 times x is 1x. Negative 7 times 2x is negative 14x. Now when we add here in the diagonal 1x and negative 14x, it's going to give us negative 13x. So we're all good. Good. So now I know I have my factors, x minus 7. And then over here, 2x plus 1. So, and that's why I like this method. You get your answers right there for you. Now, the last step we have to do then is just to set this equal to 0. And then you know that we can just take each piece, because we did this in section 8.5, x minus 7 equals 0. Take this piece here, 2x plus 1 equals 0. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add 7 to both sides. So I got x equals 7 for one of my answers. The other one, I'm going to subtract 1. So I've got 2x equals a negative 1. But I still have to continue here, so I'm going to divide by 2, and x equals a negative 1/2. So there's my answers. Those are my solutions. But the last thing I have to do, remember, is put it in set notation. So I just bring those answers over here, and I'm going to say my answers are 7 and negative 1/2. And away we go. Okay? So that is about it. We're going to this example. You can do that on your own. Hey, check this one out. Remember, the only thing you'd have to do here is get everything to the left first. So I'm going to subtract an x. And I'm going to subtract a 3 from each side. So really, it's going to cancel those out. You're going to have 4x squared minus x minus 3 equals 0. So just make sure that you get everything on one side, set it equal to 0 first. I think you guys can finish that one from there. So with the lesson summary, which option for factoring? You got 3 of them. Guess and check, product sum tables, or the square method makes the most sense to you. And then tell me why, too. Give me a why. Don't just pick one and say it. I mean, what do you like? Guess and check? Some people think that's, you're just kind of grasping at straws, throwing stuff at the wall, see if it sticks. Some people like that. Product sum table, people like that because it's in order for you, and you can just circle and find the right one because it's already in order for you. Or sometimes a square method, which is kind of a combination. Maybe it's a little bit of work. Many people don't like that because of that. And then here, solve this one. Remember to factor it first. They want you to solve it. So that solve means you're going to have an equals 0 here. So factor it first, set them equal to 0, and go from there. Okay? That is it for 8.7b. Hope you enjoyed it.